cheap on Amazon. Yeah. Oh, you got it. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Yeah. So I got the Kindle version. It's a great little book. I mean, it really is eye-opening as far as these different world views, and then what the Christian world, what the Christian's view is. Because our view is we're not trying to make heaven on earth. The Christian, and many churches believe this, that they are making the earth a better place. That's a byproduct, not an end goal, right? So if you're kind to your neighbor, if you love and serve your neighbor, that may mean that good things happen, or maybe not, right? Or maybe not. But the end of the Christian desire is that we are strangers here. Heaven is our home. That there will be a new heaven and a new earth. God will recreate this world without sin, and we look forward to that day. So, but not something that is. We're not going to fix it ourselves. Certainly not. You got the youth to help out? Yeah, we're done. Awesome. I was telling everybody I wanted to know if anybody saw the liturgical dance that Lena was doing. Did the little spin out of the pew.
She liked the music.
Yeah, that was a good hymn. Man, oh man. Did we finish early today? Was it a short sermon? Oh, cool. Did you get up and running and everything was all right? It was like the son that I said, I'll go and work, and then didn't go. Good, I'm glad. Like the tax collectors and prostitutes, right?
Another thing to add to my nursing inevitably don't run in the garage or something.
That is a great line, right? I mean, so Jesus is pretty clear there, right? I mean, it's like the tax collectors and prostitutes, right? You hear tax collectors and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. But prostitutes? Ouch, right? They get in before us? Wow. Yeah, that was good. It's a great reality. Do I have noise? Do I have sound? I'm good. Are you live? Okay. All right. Well, I'm live. We got a spill here. We got a spill. We have my two faithful followers yet, or wait for the two faithful followers to show up? You got one faithful follower? Is that you? That's you? Andy's following it. You hit the record button. Record it. Welcome to COVID. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's true. Yeah, it's kids are off school on Monday. Well, most schools are off on Monday. My wife is working. Mason is not off. Yeah, maybe a little bit, but a little bit. Everybody worshipped. No, I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm going to dig a hole. I don't want to dig a hole.
I just say I found this book so interesting because if you listen to any Christian stations or watch Christian television, there's
What is it? Yeah.
And this book, and knowing that it's written by a Christian or a Lutheran educator, makes it even more valuable
Yeah.
and is so informative. And I would encourage you guys to get it if you haven't gotten it.
Yeah, so that so the Christian worldview really depends on what flavor of Christian is telling you that worldview, right? Yeah. I mean, Joel Osteen's worldview would be certainly different than our worldview, right? I mean, he writes books like.
But everybody's talking about worldviews.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is just so comprehensive.
yeah. I think it's good to have clarity, and the Christian worldview of it is about here and now, but it's about then and there, right? I mean, it's about heaven, and about forgiveness in life, salvation in this world that leads you to the next, and so
I have to say, too, I am not a reader.
yeah,
Sit down and read the words. I usually listen to them.
yeah, yeah.
And for me, this has just been, I mean, it's just taught me, and I have read this chapter.
It's pretty concise. It's pretty. It's very organized. It's well organized. So he just lays it out, and I do like it. I do like it. Well, let's get started. So let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you in prayer, thanking you for this new day. Thank you for the blessings that you provide for us through your Son. We give you thanks, Lord, that you've brought us back and continue to return us to you. We pray that you would help us as we learn and grow in our faith, continue to strengthen us as we study your word, and we give you thanks. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, Marxism. So, Marxism and communism are, well, I don't want to walk out of the frame, but Marxism and communism are, obviously, they're linked, right? So, walk over this way. I can walk around over here. How far can I like if I go here, that right there, I'm not right. Okay, so I'll be careful. So, but we're going to look at Marxism, and in a similar way, the idea of what that all means, and communism. I think these are linked, right? So we see great similarities between Marxism and secular humanism. Last week we talked about secular humanism, and the idea behind secular humanism is that it's a utopia found here that will be created by right thinking. And if you just change your ways, if you just give up those old religious things and start thinking with an open... I love how they claim have an open mind. But what they're really saying is, think like us, or we'll remove you from the picture. Marxism is the same way. Think like us, and everything will be good. If you don't think like us, then you're the enemy, and you need to be removed. So it is quite frightening, right? The most notable exception will be the emphasis on economics, which, according to Marxism, is the driving force in history. So it's all, capitalism and communism, or capitalism and Marxism, have been diametrically opposed to each other. One is, so just a quick cap on that. The idea of Marxism and the economy is that there's only so much money. And so what we need to do is we need to pool it all together, and then we'll dole it all out. And so the idea or the thinking behind this is, if Andy is driving a Porsche and I'm driving a Pinto, that that's just not fair, right? Now he may work harder than I do, he may have a better job or whatever, and that pays more, and so he can afford to buy that. That's not fair in the Marxist society. Everyone should be equal. But what happens is becoming a Marxist does not bring me up to driving a Porsche. It brings Andy down to driving a Pinto, right? And so that therein lies the problem. It doesn't elevate people. It actually brings everyone down. Yeah.
Then what happens to the
The Porsche goes away. The Porsche becomes part of the economic engine that builds, war stuff. No, it's not destroyed. It just rusts away, and no one ever uses it anymore. Or there are two classes in Marxism, right? There's everyone, and then there's the leadership, right? The leaders. So the leaders will drive the Porsche because they're the smart people, and we're the sheep, right? So we'll all drive the Pinto, and they'll drive, you get so that's the idea, right? Here's Dr. David Noble explains. The paradise to which all history is leading is a socialist, communist society. Salvation for the Marxist lies in the consummation of the historical process in a one-world utopia. The laws leading the world toward communism are inexorable, and no amount of human will can stop the collapse of capitalism, the rise of socialism, and the steady transition from socialism to communism. That's a pretty frightening statement, right? I mean, yeah.
One thing that Marxism and communism ignore is the human personality. When this was tried in Pennsylvania at the beginning of this country, it was tried with the earliest settlers in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Everybody should do something, but what it ignores is that it isn't the drive of economics. This is the first fallacy of Marxism. Economics is a result of human's drive. It is not the reason for the drive.
Yeah.
We were created as individuals, and we acquire. I mean, it takes away the idea, which we know from the first infant. The first infant, when we're all infants, we do the same thing. We want what we want, and we want it now. And when we're infants, we get it. Mom, Dad, feed us. I mean, from the moment that we're born, somebody is taking care of us, and what we want, we try and satisfy whatever.
Yeah.
We become socialized, understand that our wants have to work in conjunction with other people's wants, not their desires. And so the entire idea here of communism, Marxism, is that can be suppressed because the state will determine what your wants and desires will be and how they will be fulfilled.
What they should be,
But they should be and how they
according to
will
the,
be fulfilled.
yeah.
That's all that's going to happen, which is why every state that does this fails, because it's not going to be determining what the society will need and then what will have.
Yeah.
Well, when that happens, I don't like sweet potatoes. But if the state says
That's all we got.
sweet potatoes, you're going to eat sweet potatoes. Now, there may be a bunch of other people out there that like sweet potatoes, but you can't grow them. That's where you get the capitalism. Because
Yeah.
they call that then a black market. People go and somebody grows another kind of potato,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then suddenly there's a market for that. So the marketplace, capitalism is fully reliant, as it says before the capitalism. The freaks change, there's a supply and demand. If you got something, build it, and I like that, I might ask you to build another thing for me. And when I do, I'll exchange my goods or services for what you've done. And if you made a mistake, you're going to have spent your labor in vain.
Well, you said it early on in your comment about the United States. They did try some communal living in certain areas, and that did not work in the United States. What they found was when the settlers came, they each got a plot of land, and they were supposed to work that plot of land. What they found was is some people just said, well, to get ahead. I'm not going to make anything more. So I'm not going to work. And some people worked harder than others. Some people provided more than others, which that wasn't, you're talking about fair, right? You're talking about a utopia where everyone is working equally as hard, equally as, to provide. Well, that didn't happen. And so when then people were provided property and they could do what they wanted with that property, they could grow what they wanted or however they wanted, then that's when all things changed. Because that guy over there, he's like, well, I don't see you using your property. I'll take both pieces of property, I'll pay you for it, and I will expand and grow, and then I'll provide you with whatever I'll provide you with the food, which then that happened. And so this whole idea of capitalism, and the idea of generosity too in that is that, capitalists are more generous, I think, than communists, because, yeah.
There are atheists who are so familiar with the Bible who say that, in fact, that's the way Christians should behave. Because the early Christian church, I'll point out,
Yeah,
was communist.
yeah. We're going to get to that.
They all sold their faith.
Yeah.
So they'll point that and say, but
Yeah.
they needed better education because it didn't work.
Yeah.
Totally different.
The comment was that the book of Acts talks about communal living, and people will point to the book of Acts and say, see, communism was in the Bible. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, because that's not, while they did say things like, they sold all their possessions and gave for the common good, that it's a little bit different than communism. So we'll get to that. The assumption is atheism. So the assumption is atheism. As in secular humanism, Marxism begins with a presupposition: there is no God, and they're going to be the government is going to be the God for you, right? So there is no God. Religion is the opium of the people. I thought that was an interesting quote, right? Religion is it's the placebo, right? We go to church so that we could be placated, calm, so that we're put at ease, and we have this false hope of something to come, and so it is the opium of the people. Religion is actually an enemy to Marxism and its goal to create heaven on earth, a classless society of communism. Changing the world would mean removing religion totally to usher in the idyllic society. In order for that to, and in some cases, some of that has already taken place in the world in which we live, right? We remove, a good example would be the separation of church and state. So that piece of writing in whose letters? Who was it? It's not in the Constitution, but it's in the letters written by, I think, Thomas Jefferson, or not Thomas Jefferson. Who is it? Thomas Paine. I think you're right. So he writes about the separation of church and state. What he's saying is that the state should not interfere with the church. Yeah. So it is Jefferson that writes that in his letters. And he's saying the separation is from state to church, not from church to state. You understand what I'm saying there? So Jefferson believed that religion should have an impact on the government, but the government should not have an impact on the church. But we've taken things of statements like that, and so what do? Now we'll get rid of the Ten Commandments on a courthouse, right? Get rid of the law. Get rid of prayer in schools. You can't. So we're removing God in a hope to kind of get this get this going. And that's a Marxist kind of idea, right? I didn't highlight this, but we want to sweep away everything that claims to be supernatural and superhuman, and thereby get rid of untruthfulness. For the root of an unhealthy and the root of all untruth and lying is the pretension of the human and the natural to be supernatural and superhuman. For that reason, we have once and for all declared war on religion and religious ideas, and care little whether we are called atheists or anything else. So that's kind of their, right? That's the foundation on which they're building. Their philosophy is a dialectic materialism. And what is a dialectic materialism? Let me get rid of this thing right here. Dialectic materialism, what does that mean? Dialectic materialism basically states two things. Everything is matter, hence materialism. And two, matter behaves dialectically or in a constant state of change, right? In a constant state of change. Let me see. The dialectic laws manifest a threefold rhythm of equilibrium, disturbance, and re-establishment of the equilibrium. In other words, nature is always in a continuous process of the way things are coming into conflict with an opposition to the way things are, resulting in a new advance. All of life is in a constant evolving process from the clash of opposite or opposing forces. This sounds an awful lot like Star Wars to me. Right? I mean, this sounds an awful lot like yin and yang. This sounds an awful lot like the idea of, we're back and forth, this rhythm. And it is very confusing, too, is it not? I mean, I just basically read some premises for you, and did you all get that? You all with me? Or you're all going, I have no idea what he just said, right? Here it is to illustrate. Consider the evolution of animals according to this atheistic and materialistic view. God did not create animals. They evolved through a continual process. Organisms evolved from the simple to the complex. Due to natural selection, some advanced species were better suited to live in their environment. They could run faster, had better vision and hearing, or had stronger defense mechanisms. Nature was disposing of the weak and saving the fittest by way of the predator and the prey. The predator must catch and eat the prey, or the prey must avoid the predator. If the prey thesis comes into opposition with the predator antithesis, this could lead to a new advancement. A dead prey and a well-fed predator. Kind of the conclusion. Consequently, another organism may hunt this predator, and the cycle continues. So it's this, right? It's this evolving cycle it is evolution. So Darwin, little did he know, was, maybe he did know. Yeah, so this constant change, there are no absolutes, or the only absolute is that everything changes. So, I mean, we see that in the way we're living. You know, we talk about postmodernism, and I mean, we've already gone past that, and now we're in this, you know, post-church world kind of thing. And but it's all this, right? I mean, it's all a drive away from God, away from faith, and that's you know, this is the drive of what the Marxist wants, what the communist is desiring, because they want to create this utopia that doesn't actually exist. To state it another way, Marxism is class warfare. Man, we see that going on in our society, don't we? You know, class warfare, this idea of fighting amongst the classes. A state of war exists, and according to Dr. Fred Schwarz, this war is historically declared. It is universal. It encompasses every aspect of society. In it, there can be no vestige of truce. The communists did not choose it. They simply recognized it. Their duty is to prosecute the war to total and complete victory. Well, that sounds encouraging, right? How should Marxists change the world? By means of what is that? Proletariat or working class morality. So we're going to, you know, we have the bourgeoisie and the proletariat idea, right? You have the
Another statement in there that's important is, according to the Marxists, peace can only exist in a totally communist world.
yeah. How about that, huh? That's another encouraging thing, right? So the ethics of it, working class morality, right? The working class morality. I didn't really highlight to anything in here, but the idea is that if you look here, the real problem with the world is not sinful people, but rich people. Right? As long as economic and political systems are in place where some win and some lose, there will always be oppression of the poor. So they pit each other. They pit us against each other in this theory, right? So you know, the rich and the poor. All right. It's almost like they believe that the poor, you know, they're stuck in that. They can't get out of that, and the rich, well, they had it handed to them. That may be the case in some areas, but it's not always that way, is it? I mean, what's the American dream? You hear about people that have been homeless for many years, and then all of a sudden they come up with an idea, and they market that idea, and they sell it, and they, you know, they change. Their lives are changed, and so that's, I think, the American dream, and so this idea of the war against the rich is a real problem, right? Lenin states Marxist ethics this way. In what sense do we reject morality? In the sense given to it by the bourgeoisie, who based ethics on God's commandments. On this point, we, of course, say that we do not believe in God, and that we know perfectly well that the clergy, the landowners, and the bourgeoisie, those in power, invoke the name of God so as to further their own interest as exploiters. Now, I mean, you know, how do you fight that, right? You know, how do you fight? You're the enemy, right? I mean, so it's class warfare. It's turning, it's turning the poor against the rich, all right? Because, you know. Yeah, so the comment is educate, educate, educate. I agree. I think we need to educate. You know, but I think that's a real challenge that we have because yeah, I agree.
You know, it's a challenge, but, you know, we're allowing this big areas of our cities to become, you know, very poor and not educated. I mean, we spend all this money to educate these people that you know, can't even read and write by the time they finish high school, and that's not right.
So here's the problem, and I agree with you, right? I'm agreeing with you, but the problem is that we're educating them in the other direction in a lot of our school systems. We're educating them in the idea of, right? Yeah, instead of being taught that, you know, we're sinners and God's grace and you know, being rich is not the problem, being poor is not the problem, but work, you know, have a work ethic and strive. Instead of that being taught, what's being taught is this class warfare, this division.
I think that we're hearing the same thing with this argument about racism. That, you know, even though you say you're colorblind and you're not racist, as soon as you say that, you're racist. You know, it's like it has to be their way or no way. And with the poor, you know, I agree. I think education is important, and unfortunately, it's a lot of black people. But there are black people out there who are trying to reach those.
So I'm flipping through the channels the other day, and there's a station on our. We live stream our TV through Amazon, or not through. Yeah, we have an Amazon Fire Stick, and I have DirecTV Now, which gives me about 60 channels, and I live stream my TV that way. It's a lot cheaper than the cable, and I don't get everything that I would like, but I don't really need it anymore, so I don't really, but I'm flipping channels the other day. And there was a station called the Revolt Channel. So I'm like, the Revolt Channel. Wonder what that's like. So I turned it on. And after about 15, I watched it for about 15 minutes, but after about 15 seconds, I thought, so here's where people are being educated, right? And it was all about how all of the things you were just talking about, you know, this the systemic racism, and you know, all white people are bad, and man, it was a rant, you know, and how we need to vote in a certain way, and how this, you know, we need to make all these drastic changes. And I mean, just the title of the channel, the Revolt Station. We'll go here and then we'll come back.
When you were just talking about the American dream, I was thinking, well, now the American dream is that you need to get somebody in your family shot by the police, and then you sue so that they give you millions of dollars, and now that's the American dream.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. I'm not gonna touch that one, but
I think you're right about the critical race theory, because these very arguments are being made in favor of the looting. That maybe these people need Gucci shoes, right? I know I do. But education, the truth of the matter is, and this is truly the dirty little secret, is that our education theorists, that all of our teachers, even at our Concordias, are trained to figure out how to teach. They are Marxists. You look at the background of Vygotsky and Dewey and these ed theorists, why do you think our kids sit at tables, which by the way, under COVID, they can't anymore, which is great. But they sit at tables, do group projects, and get a group grade. What is that? That's training their brains to think in this way.
yeah.
It's not good for them. And so then we wonder why they're not achieving, because it's very intentional. And we're seeing the fruit of that now.
Yeah, yeah. So this is being, you know, this is the underlying issue, especially in our school system. that we're battling, right? I mean,
This
it's
is why so many of us are such advocates for classical education, because we see that that route is very bad route.
yeah, or homeschooling, right? I mean,
Well, and most
yeah,
homeschoolers are
yep,
doing a classical model
yeah,
because we need truth.
yeah, absolutely. I agree.
progressivism or whatever. And if you read the subtext of it all, is that what we really need and what we're going to work at in a society is not equality of opportunity, but equality of outcome. In other words, whatever you've got, I ought to be able to have. It's not whether you have the opportunity to work for it, advance, and further yourself. That's selfish. That's not something we want. What we want is that everybody share whatever there is. So it's the equality of outcome. And which is what has failed, whether it was Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Venezuela, Soviet Union, China as well on its way. It is the idea that the people determine what the outcome is. And the outcome is constantly in conflict. As long as they can stay on top of that tiger, they will win. The leadership will win. And the rest will live in that
Yeah,
equality of outcome. And if there's nothing there, well, that's it. I mean, the Soviet Union was very happy. Everybody got 5 potatoes and a bottle of vodka a week.
right.
That was their equality.
And it was easier to go along and get along than it was to fight back because they, yeah,
Education camps. Every
yeah,
time they take over a place by force or violence, while they're killing everybody, they will also grab a bunch out, and the re-education camp was nothing more than beating you over the head until you finally say,
I give up.
I agree.
Yeah, I give in.
Churchill said that socialism is the philosophy of failure, the gospel of creed, and the creed of envy. Its inherent value is the equal sharing of misery. And that was probably the best summation.
Yeah, yeah. So understand what we're talking about is this is the worldview of an atheistic group, but we are going to get to the Christian worldview, right? Which is completely different, completely diametrically opposed or adamantly different than this one, right? So the future. What would a Marxist future look like? According to Marxism, societies have been guided through phases based on economics. Some were feudalism, capitalism, and socialism. This continual clash of the way things are with opposing forces is inevitable in a godless universe influenced by dialectic materialism. Matter in a state of constant change. Eventually, the war between the classes of haves and have-nots will lead to socialism, a government-controlled economy, which is merely a transition to communism. After socialism, the classes society of communism will appear, a perfect world where everyone's needs are met and no government is necessary, because humankind is basically good. Everyone will share freely, just as life has evolved. So society will continue to evolve into a communist utopia, where no more oppression, economic or otherwise, will exist. And so this is the desire, right? This is the end game. We talked about the passage in Acts. I think that's in here. I think it's in here. I think we'll get to it. It is, right? I think it is. All right, we'll get to it. Listen to those who have experienced this worldview firsthand. Russian thinker and author, I don't even know how, Fyodor Dostoevsky offered the following. Is that close? I was pretty close. Right? Yeah. So offered the following take on socialism. The future kingdom of socialism will have a terrible tyranny of criminals and murderers. It will throw humanity into a cruel hell of spiritual suffering and poverty. Socialist George Bernard Shaw added, you would be forcibly fed, clothed, lodged, taught, and employed, whether you liked it or not. If it were discovered that you had not character and industry enough to be worth all this trouble, you might possibly be executed in a kindly manner.
He was, by the way,
Yeah. That's frightening, isn't it? I mean, that's the Marxist idea, and we saw that. I mean, you saw that with Hitler. I mean, he was a socialist, right? Socialist Party. He rounded up a group of people that he thought wouldn't, So let's get rid of them. Yeah, that's a great question. How did he get there to begin with? Hitler got there. Yeah, Hitler got there because there was poverty in his country, and he provided everyone with food and work, and he made. Oh yeah. But it didn't start that way. He didn't start that way. He did. People loved him because he created Germany, brought it back up again, made it strong again. And then once he had everybody working and eating, and they were all building. They didn't realize they were all building tanks, but that's what they were doing, and they were broke. The country was going bankrupt because of it, but he had everybody working, and then well, we know how that turned out, right? Dr. Fred Schwartz summarizes the Marxist future this way. Communists believe they have a destiny. Their destiny is to create a new world and regenerate humankind. To do this, they must conquer the world, dethrone God, shatter the capitalist system, and by communistic dictatorship, establish the regenerative environment of socialism. This new environment will rear the young to perfection. And so the best way to when the Greeks wanted to take over Troy, they had a hard time because there was a great big wall, and so they couldn't break the wall, and the Trojans were they were pretty safe behind the wall. So what did they do? The Greeks created a horse, piled up inside the horse, and then the Trojans brought the horse right into the city. And then we know what happens, right? It didn't end well, right? The Greeks from inside the city it's tough to beat. It's tough to beat America from the outside. It's tough to destroy America from the outside, but not from the inside. Right? And so this is what's happening in our school system. This is what's happening in a lot of places around in our government. Right? Noble points out capitalism has raised more people out of poverty than all other economic systems combined. So what is the most generous country in the world? You're living in it. Right? We give more aid to people around the globe, and not necessarily just because we've collected taxes, but people helping people. There was a lady up in Wisconsin that had her beauty salon burned down. Have you seen this lady? She been there for 35 years, and her salon was burned down. And so she got a GoFundMe page, needed to raise like $200,000. And in a week, she had like $175,000. People that don't know her at all, but they're sending her money. Now, does that happen in a Marxist society? There's no money to send. Yeah. So, capitalism, and the beautiful thing is that it's based on. I believe that, if we're just strict capitalists, well, that's a problem too. But if we have this Christian ethic behind us, that's, I think, where things are drastically different. We're willing to help. We're willing to, love and serve our neighbor, right? Capitalism has raised more people out of poverty than socialism. Today, people still want to use Marxist economics just without the slaughter of the bourgeoisie, called interventionism. This is socialism by redistributing income. So you see that being pushed in, Wall Street. Get rid of Wall Street, right? And what was that thing that happened a couple of years ago about, the sit-in and all the things? Occupy Wall Street, right? The whole Occupy Wall Street thing was about getting rid of, bringing the poor down, taking all their money, because they, get the rich and give to the poor, all right? Yeah. Yeah.
We all contributed to that, therefore, we all deserve our share. It was the last one, but I mean, this has really gotten deep into our society and into our government. I mean, our whole government system of welfare is a redistribution of wealth. Now, we can as Christians say, well, we want to share, but when the government says, you don't have a choice of sharing. We're going to take your money and we're going to distribute it the way we want. You don't any longer have the ability to say, I'm a good person, that's my Christian.
Yeah. So there it is right here. Socialism encourages people to get something for nothing from the fruits of other people's labor. Right? So we have all these wealthy people. What we need to do is just take what they have because they don't deserve it. They didn't earn it, right? And we're just going to divide it all up, and we're gonna. So what happens after you get rid of all the rich people? What happens then? Yeah. Well, I mean, will we have it? I mean, so if we get rid of all the rich people and take all their money, will we have enough then to keep us, the world going? I mean, what happens when we run out, right?
The economic concern is great, but what really concerns me is the way this affects the church because of the atheism.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is part of the ideology. But then when you look at how that has played out in countries, like, for example, isn't it Russia? I can't remember which country it was, that they changed their days of the week so that everybody was working on different days, so there was no Sunday. There wasn't Sunday anymore. That piece was just not that everyone goes to church, but there was just not even that opportunity.
Yeah.
And you look at anytime the government, I think also Germany with the Union Church and how they got involved in funding the churches and therefore calling the shots of how they should.
Yeah. Well, they still do.
Yes.
So the church in Germany is funded by the state.
I think that's what's terrifying to me of this large state government.
Yeah.
They're going to call the shots, and we're the enemy.
Most Germans, when they come to America and they hear that they were supposed to give an offering to the church, they kind of look at you like, wasn't that paid by my taxes? No, not in America, right? And so,
It's the theology. I mean,
yeah,
literally why we're here.
right,
Because the Saxons had to
yeah.
find some religious freedom.
So it's not a new thing, right? It's been around a while.
So that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because we haven't learned from that.
And that's, I think, if you just educate people, they'll figure this out. I don't know whether that really. Yeah, certainly. Certainly. But you can educate people. I mean, some people are just going to be, we're all sinners. So just because you give somebody the truth doesn't mean they're going to go, right? Yoo-hoo. Right? I mean, two concepts have failed our people's work ethic and marriage. Right? So marriage has collapsed in low-income communities. When President Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty began in 1964, 7% of children were born outside of marriage. Today, that rate is 42%. Might even be higher. Sadly, the world that God created fell into sin. This imperfect world includes those who are poor. Ecclesiastes 9:11 states it this way. Again, I saw that under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those who with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. The reality of poverty and how to address it in Israel was stated in Deuteronomy 15:11. God told the Israelites, "For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and to the poor in your land." Jesus too recognized the reality of those in need and the remedy by saying in Mark 14:7, "For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them." But notice in both Old and New Testament passages, the followers of God are called to address poverty by their own charitable giving, not by a government mandate. Some people mistakenly believe, here it is right here, the Bible supports communism. In Acts 2:44 through 45 says, "And all who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need." But this is not an endorsement to the communist idea of a classless society, nor a government-induced wealth redistribution. Rather, Christians voluntarily gave of their own free will. This is consistent with God's plan for helping those in need. Believers freely giving a portion of their income to aid others. So, I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live, I live by faith. Moved by Christ to serve and love my neighbor, they gave in the book of Acts, not because they were compelled to give, but because that was what Christians did, and that's what Christians still do. Interestingly enough, before Lyndon Johnson's Poverty Act and his movement for welfare, that used to be all provided by the church. The church helped the poor. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Instead of looking into other people's pocketbooks in covetousness, we should look in the mirror and see our sinfulness. The remedy for sin is Christ. What's more, God gives us practical ways in Scripture to avoid poverty and to help the poor by cheerful giving. The Marxist sees the solution as government redistributing through a global economy. So, the Marxist worldview is to get rid of the church and to to pit classes against each other, pit the workers against the owners, right? And then in doing so, then redistributing, right? And once you've redistributed, now you have people right where you want them, because they will always be dependent on you redistributing, right? They'll always be dependent on you providing. I have no problem with some government programs that help people that are in need. But what I wrestle with is when you have a family that is on assistance and they never get off assistance, and then their children are on assistance and they never get off of it, and then their children are on it. So what we've created instead of a work ethic is a entitlement ethic and a victim ethic. And that's, this stuff is and like, Sarah has said, this is in our school system. It used to be pretty subtle, but now it's not. Right now, it's right out there. Some of this stuff's being taught. I was listening to one of the moms at well, never mind. I'm not going to go down that road. But this is something that we should be aware of and fighting against, right? And moving towards we're going to get to the Christian worldview. I think next week we have Islam, or no, New Age, then Islam. So next week is New Age and then Islam. So we have those two worldviews left, and then we'll get into the Christian worldview, right? And what that all means. Oh wow, I didn't realize it was this late. The Lord be with you.